Harris County, it's me, Taylor, and today we are sitting at the Heritage Society inside Sam Houston Park in downtown Houston. Mayor Sam Beshear appointed Houston's first park committee to oversee the establishment of this park in 1899. The 20 acres chosen came to be called Sam Houston Park and was landscaped into a Victorian wonderland with footprints laid out to pass by old mills and even a rustic bridge over a small stream. If you decide to visit the Heritage Society inside of Sam Houston Park, you'll notice that there are lots of really old homes, really old trees, and it's just an absolutely beautiful park. But this brings me back to the book that I read this month. So this month I read a historical fiction meets fantasy book that you may have heard of. It is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was my first Schwab book, which now after reading reviews, I now gotta go and dabble and see what else of hers that I can dive into. But I really did enjoy this novel a lot. It brought both that historic element as well as this fantasy, magical, mythical element to the story as well. With that all said, this historical fantasy novel that we are reading, there are some triggering things that I do want to let my readers all know, that there is some sexual things, there's some drug things, some alcohol things. So if any of these things are a trigger for you, definitely think twice before reading. However, let me start with saying by Schwab's writing is just absolutely beautiful. If nothing else from this book, the actual story and the way it was written itself is very flowery, and you could see and smell and hear everything that Addie is going throughout the story. I don't want to give everybody too many spoilers, but here's a quick summary of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So this book is character driven. If you were looking for a plot driven book, this book may not be for you. Addie is the central, she's the sun in the book, and everything else revolves around her. The book begins 300 years ago, I think it's 1714, when Addie is running away from her wedding. She feels like she has lost all freedom. It does give you some backstory on her family and a couple of other characters that she lived with in the beginning in the 1700s. But from there, we pretty much immediately meet where her fate changes. She runs away from her wedding and she goes into the woods where she meets the Darkness. He's known by many names throughout the book. I'm not gonna say his name, I'll let you guys find out if you read it for yourselves. But she immediately meets him and begs him for freedom. She wants to be free, she wants to be free, she wants to be free. She doesn't want to be held down by society. She doesn't want to have any of these things holding her down. And she doesn't want to get married. So she makes this deal. However, she immediately finds out it is more of a curse. So she goes through the next 200 years being forgotten. Anytime someone looks away from her, they go to the bathroom, they close a door, they close a window. She explains that she goes to hotel rooms and pays for hotel rooms and then gets kicked out because they never remember her paying, or they think she snuck in, or she starts to talk about how she becomes a thief. And like I said, this is character driven, so it's a lot of what is personally happening to her over these 300 years. So about the middle of the book, she starts talking about 2014. Again, this book jumps back and forth. You're going in 1700s to the 1800s to the 2000s, back to the 1700s. So it's really hard to keep up with this timeline. But Addie, she gets to 2014 and she walks into a bookstore, and for the last 300 years, she's been stealing, she's been getting by any means necessary. And so she goes into this bookstore, and like she normally would, she steals a book and walks out. The owner follows her out and asks her, hey, you're gonna steal that book? And recognizes her after walking out the door. This is the first time that Addie is recognized after a door's been shut in 300 years. Meanwhile, all of this is going on, the back and forth of time. Luke, or the Darkness, visits her almost every anniversary, skipping a few, but almost every anniversary. So there is this relationship going on between her and Luke, while also there's this relationship between her and Henry building, because he's the only person that remembers her. So I won't go into any more detail here, but I do really, really, really think this book was a must read. If I was gonna rate it, it was gonna be a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed reading it. However, it did get some bad reviews. So if you were like me, you probably go on Goodreads to read about the reviews of a book that you read or a book that you want to read. And Addie LaRue is one that I didn't read the good reviews, or the good reviews, sort of. I didn't read the Goodreads reviews before I read the book, which now looking back, I am actually happy about. So I really liked the book, and when I got on Goodreads, I found that a lot of people weren't as fond of the book as I was. I found that some people didn't like that there were worldly events in the book, but nothing went into detail. Everything was Addie's life and what Addie was experiencing and Addie's personal choices. It talks about World War I, it talks about World War II, it talks about the plague, but none of that goes into excruciating detail. If you're looking for historical fiction that is immersed in the history, again, this is a book that is character driven, and it's about Addie's life and Addie's personal experience during these historical events, not the historical events themselves. So I did find that on Goodreads, a lot of people were a little upset about that, and given the book is about Addie, I didn't mind it much. My feelings about this book is that I actually felt really bad for Addie. Actually, I felt bad for Henry too. Both of these characters, our main characters, had a sort of way of making bad choices based on something they were yearning for in the moment, and were stuck with those consequences the entire rest of the book, rest of their lives. And we see a lot of that in both these characters. They continuously make the wrong choice in here as much as they're trying to do the right thing. So they did make these bad choices, right? And they also, the whole entire book is based on relationships. The whole time you're hearing about Addie's relationship with everybody she's meeting, because she doesn't have a firm grasp on any sort of relationship because they forget her until Henry. And seeing her relationship with Henry develop versus her relationship with the Darkness, or Luke, develop over time, you see why she's so conflicted and is making these terrible choices. Her relationships don't last. Nothing lasts. It's all has an expiration date. So for her, she even speaks about in one part of the book meeting this girl, and every night she's hanging out with this girl every night. But every night for the girl, it's her first time to meet Addie. It's never Addie's first time to meet this girl. She's already met her for the first time. She remembers everything. But the girl comes back every night. Hi, how are you? Just like they were first meeting. So she has this altered perception of what a relationship is, which I feel like as the reader, I could get a lot from that. People all have trouble with relationships. So this book kind of gave you a different perspective on that. You don't hear a lot of stories tell you relationships expire, relationships don't last. We get a lot of romance, and we get a lot of best friendships or kinships. But this one was definitely different for sure. My overall perspective of this book is I think everybody should read it. I think that if you like history, if you like myths, if you like fantasy, this is all three of those wrapped in one. And it's all the story of a very strong, or attempting to be strong, woman. So I do highly recommend The Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and I'll let you know how I like her other books. But in the meantime, you know that you can always go and grab a book from your local Harris County Public Library, or you can check ebooks and e-audiobooks out at www.hcpl.net. And remember, these books can go anywhere with you because no shelves required. Bye, Harris County.